The showdown happened a month ago, right in our living room. Vanessa stood up, arms crossed, looking at me with absolute determination. My dog, Buster, a 7-year-old golden retriever, was asleep at my feet. He must have felt the tension because he let out a little snort in his sleep. "I can't do this anymore, Mark," she said sharply. "I'm sneezing all the time. My eyes itch, and I find his hair everywhere. It's disgusting." She pointed at the sleeping dog with a theatrical finger. The thing is, the allergy was new. She didn't have it during the first year and a half of our relationship. She seemed to love Buster. At least, that's how it looked. Walks in the park, Instagram photos, cuddles on the couch. Everything was perfect. Then her sister Megan moved back to town 6 months ago. Megan is the kind of person who believes animals belong on a farm, not in a city apartment. And after each visit from her, Vanessa supposedly started having new flare-ups, sneezes and complaints about hair. At first it was small, but over time it turned into something huge, and, as she saw it, unsolvable. Something that was supposedly ruining her life. I understood. This wasn't just an allergy. It was a struggle for control. It was Megan getting into her head and planting the idea that a serious, put-together couple shouldn't have a shedding dog in a 2-bedroom apartment. Buster had been in my life long before Vanessa. He'd been with me through a layoff, a bitter breakup, and my father's funeral. To me, he wasn't just a pet. He was family. Selling him would be like selling a younger brother. I looked at her furious face, then at Buster, who had begun to twitch in his sleep, clearly chasing squirrels in his dreams. I knew arguing was a trap. If I defended my position, I'd look like someone who didn't care about her health. If I refused, I'd look like the person choosing a dog over her. She had constructed such a perfect argument that, in any case, she would appear the victim. So I chose another route. I stood up, went over, put my hands on her shoulders, and looked into her eyes with the most sincere expression I could simulate. "You're right. I'm sorry it got this bad. You're my priority." The change was instant. The anger dissolved, and a triumphant, relieved smile appeared on her face. She hugged me tightly. "Oh, thank you, baby. I knew you'd understand. This is for the best. We'll finally have a clean adult apartment." I hugged her back, patting her on the back and covertly glancing over her shoulder at Buster. A cold-blooded plan was already forming in my head. My priority wasn't her. My priority was the loyal, loving creature who had been with me for 7 years, and I was going to give him the life he deserved. The next morning, while she was at yoga, I made the first call, not to a shelter or a rescue, but to a realtor named Phil, who had helped a friend sell an apartment last year. I told him I wanted to list our apartment for sale effective immediately. There was a pause on the other end. "Everything okay?" Phil asked. "I think it's time for a change," I replied. The apartment was mine. I'd bought it long before Vanessa arrived. She had moved in about a year ago. Her name wasn't on the deed or the mortgage. She paid half the utilities and for groceries. But formally, she was more of an informal roommate without a contract, which created legal ambiguity but didn't make her an owner. The first step to solving the dog problem was to get rid of the property where she pictured our future. While Phil prepared the listing paperwork, I moved on to the second step. I started looking at houses in the suburbs about 40 minutes from the city. My search filter had one requirement: a big backyard. I spent a couple of hours scrolling. My heart was racing with a mix of anger and anticipation. I found 3 suitable options. When Vanessa returned, I moved to the next phase of the plan. I sat her on the couch. "I've been thinking a lot about the situation," I began, trying to sound concerned. "You're my priority. So we need to make some serious decisions." I told her I'd called the realtor and was going to put the apartment up for sale. Her jaw dropped. "What? Why? You loved this place." I know, I said, placing my hand on her knee. But without Buster, the place feels too big. It's a constant reminder. And the maintenance fees are high. If we sell now, we can get a smaller, more manageable place. Something fresh with no dog memories. A new start for us. Her eyes lit up. The logic was tailored just enough to fit her dream. A clean adult apartment without a pet. Okay, she said slowly. I get it. But what about Buster? Have you listed him yet? I'm working on it. I want to find him the right home, I lied gently. I needed time, and that lie bought it. It made me look like the sad, responsible owner trying to do right by the dog. She believed me. 2 days later, the for sale sign was up. That same evening, her sister Megan called me. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail. The tone was full of hypocritical sympathy. Mark, Vanessa told me about the apartment. I think you're brave. You're doing the right thing. I know how much you love that dog, but Vanessa's health is more important. The words were dripping with condescension. I saved the message. Over the next 2 weeks, our lives became a circus of showings. The apartment always had to be spotless, and every time Phil brought potential buyers, I openly boarded Buster with friends. Vanessa was saintly in public. She would tell buyers how much she loved the place, but that they were supposedly downsizing. Meanwhile, I secretly visited the houses. The third one was perfect. A modest 3-bedroom with a huge fenced backyard and a massive oak tree. I pictured Buster running and rolling in the grass. I put in an offer using my savings, money Vanessa didn't know I had. My offer was accepted the next day. I became the owner of a new home she knew nothing about. The financial part continued. I suggested we close our joint account to simplify finances for the sale. I framed it as practical. It would make managing money easier until the sale closed, and then we could open a new joint account. She agreed without question. She was so absorbed in the idea of a new, clean life that she didn't notice the details. She was already shopping for furniture for a hypothetical, small chic apartment, and had even made a shared photo album with places she liked. Tiny, sterile apartments with no pets rules. Every time she showed me a picture, I nodded and said, "Looks great, honey. Very clean." A small crack in her fantasy appeared a week before the closing, during dinner with her parents. Her mother praised me for putting Vanessa first. Her usually quiet father looked at me with a hint of pity. Megan, predictably, turned the screw and asked directly, "So, what about Buster? Have you found him a home?" She smirked. "I have a friend on a farm. I'm sure they could use a good guard dog." The thought of my friendly, goofy retriever becoming a stranger's guard dog on some farm made my blood run cold. But I didn't show it. "I'll handle it," I said flatly to shut it down. That episode only strengthened my determination. They would suffer consequences, and Megan had earned a special front row seat in this drama. On the day of the open house for my apartment, Phil had printed glossy flyers with photos and the usual details. At the bottom of one, I noticed the line, "Seller is highly motivated and has already secured their next home at 125 Oakwood Lane." I saw it on the kitchen counter and realized it was only a matter of time. That afternoon, I started moving my things to the new house, including Buster. I let him loose in the backyard for the first time. He bolted around, rolling in the grass, pure joy. I spent the night on an air mattress on the floor, with Buster curled up beside me. The calmest night I'd had in months. On the morning of the open house, my phone erupted with frantic texts from Vanessa. "What is 125 Oakwood Lane? What did you do?" Then a call from an unfamiliar number. It was Megan, screaming, "You psychopath! What have you done? Vanessa is in pieces!" I stayed silent as she ranted, then heard Vanessa sobbing in the background. "He tricked me. He lied to me." When Megan ran out of steam, I spoke calmly. "The open house starts in an hour. I'd appreciate it if you and Vanessa picked up her things before the potential buyers arrive. I left some boxes in the living room. We'll come get them." She wailed that I couldn't just kick her out. "Actually," I said, "I can. Her name isn't on the deed, and it isn't on the deed to the new place. The apartment is being sold. Finding a new place is her problem." They arrived 20 minutes later, precisely as I was leaving with the last of my things. It was more chaotic than I imagined. Phil was setting up his sign when their car screeched to a halt. Vanessa ran out, face swollen with tears, trying to block me from getting into my own car. Megan shoved Phil, accusing him of being part of my scheme. A neat, nice-looking couple who'd come early to the showing watched from the sidewalk. "You told me I was your priority," Vanessa whispered. "I did," I replied, steady and loud enough for passers-by to hear. "And I kept that promise. I prioritized you. I prioritized getting you out of my life and out of Buster's life. It was the most important thing I had to do." I looked at Megan, still yelling at my realtor. "And you should really learn not to meddle in other people's relationships." I got in my car and drove away, leaving them standing on the sidewalk as the first prospective buyers walked up to the open house. Phil called an hour later. He said they had to threaten to call the police for trespassing before they finally left, but the spectacle had made the buyers sympathetic toward me, and he received 2 offers above asking. I told him to accept the highest. Predictably, Vanessa and Megan launched a smear campaign on social media, vague posts about betrayal and being left homeless, painting me as the villain who tricked an allergic woman. They used old, flattering photos of us to craft the story of a perfect relationship I'd supposedly ruined. Some mutual friends messaged me angrily. I didn't engage. Instead, I posted one photo on my own page. Buster running joyfully in his new huge backyard, captioned simply, "Keeping what really matters." I attached an audio file, the voicemail from Megan, where she patronizingly praised me for getting rid of the mangy dog for Vanessa's health. The contrast between her earlier condescending tone and her current accusations was glaring. The post did its job. Friends who had been unsure went quiet. Some apologized, saying they hadn't known the whole story. The social media war fizzled. Facts, it turns out, are stubborn. The next escalation came from their parents. Their mother called me sobbing, begging me to take Vanessa back, or at least give her half the proceeds from the sale. I calmly explained Vanessa had contributed nothing to the down payment or mortgage, and that the deed named me as the sole owner. I suggested that if Vanessa needed housing, she might return to her parents. Silence followed, then a dial tone. Vanessa did move in with Megan to their 1-bedroom. I heard from a friend. It was a nightmare. 2 high-maintenance sisters in a confined space, and Megan discovered Vanessa wasn't the most considerate roommate. The final desperate move came weeks later. A legal demand for $50,000 for emotional distress and Vanessa's alleged investment in the domestic partnership. It was full of legal-sounding nonsense, clearly written by Megan after watching a few courtroom dramas. I hired a lawyer, a sharp, composed woman named Sarah. She laughed when she read the demand. We drafted a response, attached a copy of the deed showing I was the sole owner, bank statements proving I paid 100% of the mortgage, and documentation demonstrating Vanessa's payments were limited to shared utilities, effectively making her a month-to-month occupant. In our reply, we threatened defamation claims over their false social posts and stated that if they pursued their frivolous claim, we would countersue for legal fees and reputational damage. The cherry on top was a transcript of Megan's voicemail admitting she had been pushing Vanessa to get rid of the dog. After that, we heard nothing from their attorney. The threats stopped. The social posts were deleted. Silence followed. The last I heard, Vanessa was still living with Megan, and their place was full of fights. Vanessa had to take a second job to cover her share of the rent. Megan was complaining to anyone who would listen that Vanessa had ruined her life. The perfect adult sister alliance had fallen apart under the weight of real-life responsibility. I'm writing this from my new living room. The back door is open, and a cool evening breeze drifts in. I can hear Buster outside chasing a firefly in the dusk. The house is quiet and peaceful. She gave me an ultimatum, her or Buster. In the end, I made sure she got exactly what she deserved, a life without either of us. I blocked her number and returned to my life. Masha.